Hey, Deji.
How's it going, Mariah? How you
It's
feeling?
going so well. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. We connected because you have a newsletter called the Thriving Artist Newsletter,
Yep.
and you write about so many amazing topics that I think are really relevant to not only artists, but anyone who would consider themselves creative, which I think you and I both agree is everyone. Everyone has that creative capacity within them.
Hmm.
So we have a lot of different things that I hope we get to touch on, but I'm just excited to hear some of your wisdom and hear some of your life experiences.
Yeah.
You shared a short little bio, so I'm going to read that for people as like an introduction. Um, Ayodeji Odewale is a musician, music producer, entrepreneur, and writer based in South Florida. Recognizing that succeeding as an artist and entrepreneur is more in the mind than most realize, Dio has made it his mission to eliminate all mental blockages preventing his success, and he has dedicated himself to helping his fellow artists do the same. I love that that's way more of a mission statement than it is a bio. It's like that's your vision. So tell me a little bit about that and how you kind of came to make that your mission statement.
Um, it's funny. It has like so many layers because I've been in the creative field for. I've been in terms of like actions. I feel like I've been an artist my whole life, but I didn't start going full force and like um, let's say 100% like this is what I'm doing with my life until like maybe a decade ago, maybe like yeah a decade ago when I got enrolled into music school. But basically down the line, over that time, you're doing so much, you're working so hard, you are, you're visualizing and you're doing, it feels like you're doing everything right, and it doesn't, nothing externally looks as if it's changing. It's like you're doing,
Mm.
I'm practicing 8 hours a day. I'm like, you know, I'm doing the thing, right? And then I look up one day and I'm like, it doesn't really feel like I'm that much further than I was when I started. And
And this is after like 10 years, so like
this
consistent
is, yeah, this is after,
practice and
yeah, multiple years of practice, multiple years of putting myself out there, multiple years of putting out music and things like that. And then I look up and I'm like, it doesn't really feel, I don't really feel externally like I'm that much better. Honestly, over time you obviously get better, like it's not that I wasn't getting better, but it's like my life didn't look any different.
mm,
And a lot of that was, I noticed a lot of that was because of my subconscious, like
mm-hmm.
how I was moving based off of different traumas and things that I had experienced, based off of like just negative thought patterns, based off of fear and things like that. Because you can be doing, physically think you're doing all the wrong things, but like if you are, if you're not aware of what your subconscious mind is doing, all of those things that you could be doing could be leading you away from where you're trying to go. And that's
Mm.
essentially what self sabotage is. And that's what was happening for a lot of that time. And it wasn't until I made that connection that I was like, oh, that that is the that's the reason behind like everything that I've been working for that I don't have. And that's when I realized like, oh, it's not just about working hard. Like working hard is only part of the equation. But if you're working hard on the wrong things, which is very possible, which is what happens most of the time if your mind isn't right, if you're not paying attention to the things that you think and the things that you react to and things like that, you are you could be working on the wrong things, and then you're going to wonder why you're making no progress. And it's when I realized that I started focusing more on my inner self. And the more I did that, the more I realized that this is not just for me. Like
Mm.
this is, it's almost like when you learn so much and you harbor in information, it almost feels like the universe punishes you for it if you don't share it. Like it kind of feels like
Like
that.
overflows, starts
Yeah.
to.
It's like you start to implode on yourself
Mm,
if you're not teaching what you're learning.
yeah.
Um, so
I love that. And that relationship between like student and teacher, it's very reciprocal and it's always evolving, right?
yeah.
Um, was there a moment that you kind of had an aha where something happened, whether internally or externally, and you're like, oh, this is kind of the missing piece? It's like my mindset, not just what I'm doing externally.
There were a couple of aha moments. I think one aha moment was one aha moment is when it's like I realized that I was, even though I was doing a lot of things, like I was working, I was busy, and I was working on what seemed to be the right things. I realized I had a moment where I was just like, huh, like I've been, and granted, COVID happened too, so like the music scene was kind of weird at that point. But still, even after it kind of died down and things were starting to be live again, I was not really performing like that, and I was wondering, like in a sense, I was wondering why I wasn't getting better or wasn't getting to the level that I
Mm,
wanted to, because I found myself in this space where I was practicing to prove that I was good enough to do things like that, to perform, to um, because of all the negative feedback I got from my family when I decided to pursue music.
mm,
I didn't realize how much it had affected me, but it affected me in the way where it didn't necessarily, it felt like I was never going to be good enough.
mm-hmm.
And so I continued to just practice and practice and practice and not actually do the thing that makes you better. And so it's like a because practicing makes you better, but practice is never going to prepare you for completely, like practice is never going to shoot your skill level up as much as actually doing the thing, actually
Performing.
playing, yeah, performing, playing with other musicians, making the music, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I was doing that for a long time, and then I had that aha moment, and then it's like I got like all the flashbacks of like all the things, all the things that was said, all the things that were said to me when I decided to pursue music, and I was just like, oh, like these things actually affected me way more than I even believed. And another aha moment that I had was when I was doing music therapy. Um, I was doing music therapy for kids with autism.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was greatest job I've ever had, for
Mm,
sure. Like greatest job I've ever had. I learned so much on that job, and a lot of like I had a bunch of aha moments on that job too. Um, and it was when I brought music to the kids, and also I had an amazing team, amazing coworkers that also like seeing their passion for what what they did, and then actually being in that environment and teaching the kids and seeing how they react to music and seeing how they project their perception of music on you.
mm-hmm.
It's just like, and how much I learned about music teaching them. Um, that was another aha moment where it was just like, yeah, you you learn that your mission, a lot of times what you want maybe doesn't change, but why you want it changes so much.
Mm,
Because in the beginning, I remember I wanted it because I wanted fame, and I wanted to be like um, I want like I used to have, and I'm not gonna say that it's gone like completely, but I used to have an arrogance about me where it was like I work as hard as I do because I want to be a better human than the next human, you know. And then you realize that um, no, you're actually supposed to be a better human so you can help the other human get better,
mm,
and in helping the other human get better, you actually get better as well.
yeah.
So it was. like those were a couple aha moments that I had. Um, so yeah.
I think that makes so much sense, like coming from a maybe a background where maybe being an artist wasn't something that felt safe, or maybe something that was in the comfort zone of your family, or like those dynamics, and then kind of really taking in those maybe negative comments, or even that fear. I think there's a lot of fear
Yeah.
about being an artist and being able to make a living. And like I grew up with a background where like we didn't have a lot of money, and so like that just wasn't even something that was accessible to me to think about being an artist, because of all of the different, not only family expectations and kind of language around being a starving artist, but also there's a lot of that culturally too. It's not just on families, but
Yeah.
I think we've been told a lot of stories about what it looks like to be able to provide for yourself as an artist. So it's like you kind of were like living in that milieu of like, okay, well, I've got to prove them wrong. I've got to like be the best that I can be to like get that external validation. You went from that space to almost like, how can I be of service? And
Yeah.
that just totally takes you out of like that headspace of like, the ego of being very like self-aware, and it like puts the focus on others and like how you can contribute, which is really what being an artist is all about, right?
Mhm. Yeah. It's really what being a human is all about. And that was it's funny that you say that, because that was another aha moment that I had. It's like I was doing so much. I was doing so much, but I was so selfish. Like
Mm,
I was like, it was all because of me and what I wanted, and um, yeah, it was all because of me, what I wanted, and how I wanted to live my life, and um, and again, a lot of that selfishness came from like past experiences, trauma, being betrayed by people, like um, different things like that. But ultimately, it got me to a decent spot, as in like I was able to, like we talk about repurposing trauma, right? I was able to use it to elevate myself, but in doing that, I started like I actually started becoming more of a selfish person. And then when I had um, that job, like I said, the greatest job I've ever had, that's I had the aha moment of life truly being about servitude on like in that space. Because that when I really and I've had jobs in education before, but it wasn't until that I had that one specifically that I realized like, oh, this whole thing is about servitude, and the
yeah.
universe rewards servitude.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit more about that, because I think, there is such a fine line between like giving from a place of abundance and giving from a place where you're like tapped in and you have maybe that spiritual connection, so you're like constantly being renewed.
Hmm.
And then there's that kind of expectation that our culture has from like many different people of just like almost being a martyr, or almost like sacrificing yourself for the benefit of others. And I think
Yeah,
they're two very different things, and I think
yeah,
we get them confused sometimes. And
hmm,
I think people kind of have this fear of like, well, I have to be selfish. I have to look out for myself because I don't want to burn out. I don't want to pour from an empty cup. I
hmm.
don't want to give and have nothing left for myself. But I think what you're talking about is a very different experience.
Yeah. It is. It is. Um, it's a sense of purpose in what you do.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's a sense of purpose in what you do. Like if you've, I feel like anybody who's ever reached um, certain heights in anything or achieved mastery, like I think along that road, I would guess, I don't have the facts on this, but I would, in my from my experience and from what I've learned about um, a lot of the greats, there comes a point like it starts in a selfish place. Like it usually, I feel like in a lot of in most cases it starts from a selfish place. Maybe not all, but in most. But you get to a point where you realize that like what, like your dreams and your perspective and everything that you want isn't even enough. Like
Mm,
it's not even enough to push you to get there, because it's not an easy road. And you need all the reasons, you need all the reasons to get there as possible. And if you are the only reason, you just it you can't, it's I don't think it's possible to get there,
yeah.
um, because it's like you it's just not a it's not an easy mission. And I feel like the universe was created that way for a reason, because we're here to elevate, we're here to make sure that the human species continues. And
Mm,
so in order to do that, we can't just be self-centered. We can't just be all up in what we want and our intentions. It's like it's programmed in us to serve. And so it's like when we
mm,
don't, not only do we feel like shit, but everything starts to look like shit in terms of like our life perspective. And so it's not necessarily about pouring from an empty cup or sacrificing yourself. It's just about understanding that what you want and what you're working for is is like it's in you because it's meant to make other people's lives better. And
mm,
so, when you have that perspective, you're still technically being selfish because you're going for what you want, but you're using it to serve others, and then you're also taking care of yourself along the way, because that's also important. And
right.
by focusing on what you want, you are taking care of yourself. By using it to serve others, you are you're fulfilling the prophecy of the universe. So it's like there is
Woo.
there is no empty cup. You know.
I love that. Fulfilling the prophecy of the universe. That's such a beautiful way to look at it.
That's how I see it. That's how I see it. That's what those aha moments taught me. It was like, oh, there's we are free to an extent, but there's so many things that nature clearly wants, that is clearly moving us in the direction to do. And when we stray from that, it feels like death.
It cuts off our resources and our connection to everything else. And I think that's something I've been really learning, kind of laying aside that ego and saying, like, okay, I'm not meant to make this happen. I'm not meant to force anything here. I'm not meant to do it on my own. I'm really meant to embody this type of surrender where it's like I acknowledge my desires because I really think that our desires are holy. I think they're sacred. I think they're given to us for a reason and a purpose. And I think we're each given different ones because they're unique to us. And so I don't think it's like, letting go of our dreams, like you said. It's not about letting go of your dreams or giving up on them, but it's about approaching them from a different perspective of like, this is holy. And also, that means the universe is conspiring with me. And how do I let go of the how, the when, the where, the who,
Yeah,
and just focus on, what I believe my purpose and mission to be, and let all of these resources and synchronicities kind of come in to help me on my path.
yeah.
And
That's
I think that that lights us up from the inside. And I think when we're doing that, we don't need all of the external validation. I think it will come,
yeah.
but I think, like you said, our motivation is so different.
It makes life feel it makes life have a lot less friction.
Mm,
It feels like before I thought this way, it felt like, and I have very big goals. So when you have big goals, there's always going to be resistance against it. Um, so it's not that my life is just completely frictionless right now. It's not. But when I didn't think this way, like it felt like I was wearing like a cinder block suit,
mm.
tied to a truck,
Oh
you
my
know?
God.
So have you ever read The Alchemist?
Yes, it's one of
Yeah,
my favorite books.
yeah. I've read it like 3 times.
It's so
I,
good.
yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah. I was given that book at just the right moment in time too. I was, in my mid-20s, and I was traveling, and I was like just lost, in a very real sense of the word. And I was staying with this older couple, and the wife was like, I think you should read this book. And she's like, I have an English copy. Here you go. It was this Dutch couple I was staying with. So, yeah, it definitely came into my life at the right time and has been one of those anchor points for me to kind of refer back to and remember. And I
Yeah.
love too, like the cyclical nature of that book. Of like you start off and you're seeking this treasure, and you go on all these adventures, you explore, and then it's like you come back home and you're like, it's here, it's right here the whole time, but you still had to leave to come back.
Yeah. Still
So
have to
I
leave.
love that part of it.
Yeah. It's I feel like it's so funny. I say this about one of Drake's albums too. It's called Take Care. Most people think that it's his best album. I think it's probably his second best, but um, I feel like that album came out when everybody in the world had heartbreak.
mm,
It's the exact time, and that album came out right then and there. And I feel like The Alchemist is a similar situation. Like that book, most people who read that book, I feel like it popped into their life like at the perfect time, the perfect moment,
right.
the moment where they needed it. And yeah, it's and then it's always there for you to reread it because it feels
It
like every
is.
time I always feel in my soul when I need to reread it. And yeah, it's just one of those. It's just one of those books that it teaches you because a lot of these things are difficult because it's the world is very noisy.
It is.
and I actually wrote a newsletter article about the importance of silence, because silence has been huge in my life, huge. Turning off all phones, like not having the TV on, um, just not listening to music,
mm,
especially being it started when I was in music school because in music school you hear sounds all day every day, and then when you go home you have to hear more sounds because you have to
you're
practice.
practicing.
um, and so your ears get tired and they get fatigued, and when you that's when I first fell in love with silence, like because that like my ears always felt fatigue, and I always when I wasn't making music or listening or in school I wanted silence. But then I realized that it also has to do with like, oh, are you texting or are you scrolling through Instagram? Because that's also noise.
It is.
Um, it's yeah, it's like you might not hear anything, but like you're still consuming like vibrations, sounds, thoughts, and all that stuff. So it's like it's still very noisy and it gets overwhelming. And you, with how noisy like the world is, it's very hard to hear a lot of this stuff. It's hard to hear what the birds are telling you. It's hard to hear what what the trees are telling you, and it's hard to hear what the wind is telling you. And all of those beings have their their voice that's important for you to hear to figure out what you need to do in order to be happy and figure out your desires in life and things like that. So um that's like silence really, I'm a big advocate for silence, big
Do you
advocate.
do you have maybe like daily rituals or practices that kind of help you anchor into that silence, or that help you kind of, I mean, because it's hard to block out that noise,
Hmm.
totally, as we are like living in the world and we are, creating and putting out our work. So it's like you have to have some interaction with it.
Yeah.
But how have you created boundaries maybe to kind of find that harmony?
um all my boundaries stem from me taking receiving an input and then like paying attention to how I feel afterwards.
Mm.
um that's where all my boundaries come from. uh so when it comes up to creating them, I've just noticed that like all of that, even when it comes up to creating and it comes up to um, being on social media, it's like, and it honestly, one that's probably the biggest my biggest gripe with being an artist or creative or entrepreneur is like your the dependency on the internet versus like natural my natural want desire to be away from the internet.
Yeah.
um like that clash is like probably one of the most uncomfortable things for me, being a creative. But at the same time, the boundaries I've set are, one, like my phone is always on like it's always on do not disturb. Like everyone
Yeah.
who's close to me knows that they need to call me twice if they need to talk to me. Everyone who's close to me knows that. It's always going to be on do not disturb because I hate notifications.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I've also purposely unplugged from, a lot of TV shows, a lot of like video games. I used to be a heavy gamer,
Mm.
um, because, again, that's more noise. And it's not to say that I'll never watch a movie again, but like I feel like there's a like seasons of silence are very important. So it's like you just have to be very intentional about it because you know a car is driving down the street, it's going to make some noise. Like you have to actually intentionally be like, okay, my phone is going to be off from so and so hours. um, I'm not going to open my computer. I just want to, like, I'm not even going to read a book. I'm just going to sit here
Mm-hmm.
and listen,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to
That's
sit here.
hard because even when I meditate, I usually have a little bit of music in the background.
Hey,
Because I think it's just so, it's kind of like the default, right? There's so much noise all the time. It's like we've kind of increased our threshold for tolerating it in kind of a negative sense.
Mhm.
Um, but I have been going outside with my husband. It's summertime, and so the sun sets usually after we put the baby to bed. And
Yeah.
just watching the sunset from the deck and just sitting there and just like watching the sky as it changes and like the colors that come out and the birds flying overhead, like that's been really meditative. And that's been like a simple practice that I've noticed, like instead of watching a movie before bed or reading a book or something, it's like let's sit outside, let's listen to the cicadas,
Yeah.
let's just be here present in this moment. And I remember as a kid, like I would hear those sounds all the time, like the cicadas, the crickets. It's a different kind of noise. I think it's more of like a symphony, nature
Yeah.
symphony. But as an adult, I'm like I haven't really noticed those sounds as much, and it's like because you're not outside.
Yeah. Because you're not
So,
outside and you're not, and we're not listening as much. It's like we walk outside and we're already focused on what we have to do for work,
or we have
or
our phone our earplugs in.
or we're blasting music, or we're listening, or we're doing like, we're thinking about what we're just our brains are just like
Hmm.
we're nowhere near as present as we were when we were kids.
Right. And
And
I feel so privileged that I grew up. I did have some childhood before the internet. So
yeah,
it's like I have like that anchor point again, to kind of look back to, and it's like what did I do before I had a phone? I was like I played outside, I was outside. I was in nature. I was immersed in that presence of nature.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting time we live in with the internet because I feel like people who are getting born into this time, um, it's like it's crazy. The it's like amazing, but it's shit at the same time. It's like you if you learn quick enough, like you can just fast track. Like there's 16-year-old millionaires.
Hmm.
You can literally just fast track your way to like where where people 10 years ago, 20 years ago didn't never reached in their 80 years of life. And in terms of not just wealth but intelligence as well. Like a lot of these kids are just super smart.
Yeah. Hmm.
But at the same time, there's that the dark side is equally as present,
Mhm.
where you know that addiction to the internet is can be completely can just be it can just grab you like that. And in terms of like the dark side of the internet, the pornography, the content that's making people dumber, the just all types of things. The because there's a very clear dark side to the internet, which everyone is pretty aware of.
Well, and I think too, like maybe as creatives, this is something that we have to learn how to navigate because I think one of the things that I've recognized is like I'm a lot more distractible because my brain is used to those instant hits of dopamine.
Yeah.
Like every time someone likes something or comments, it's like dopamine, dopamine. And so it's like you get that instant gratification.
Hmm.
Whereas the creative process is not like that at
It's
all.
not
It's
instant.
not
Oh
like that at
my gosh.
all. You have to really slog through it sometimes, and it's not always
Yeah.
instantly gratifying. I've been
It's
working on a book.
rarely.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on a book for a decade, and like, it's still not out in the world, and I'm just like, oh, sometimes I'm just like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah.
something that I've come back to as someone who wants to create is like, I want to create work that outlives me. I
Hmm.
want to create work that has depth,
Yeah.
and that does take time, and that does take process. And
Hmm.
process is messy and it's not always linear. And I think a lot of people in this day and age, they're so focused on like, the engagement that they get from social media of like constantly just putting out content, content, content. But no one's going to remember a tweet that you wrote 50 years from now.
Yeah.
They're going to remember, a masterpiece that you painted and it took you 20 years to finish. So I've just been kind of trying to create from that context of like, I want to make work that outlives me and I want to make work with significant depth to it. And
It's
that's hard
it's
in this
tough.
day and age.
It's tough because like the that's the mission, that's the point, and that's the process. But the masses are the masses are looking for that dopamine hit, right?
Hmm.
And so that's the tricky part about being an artist and an entrepreneur is that the fact that you have to. And I also kind of just I like I feel like by definition artists and entrepreneurs are really the same,
Mm.
but um but some people who are entrepreneurs don't necessarily consider themselves artists, but I feel like they're the same, which I also wrote an article about that too. But um the problem with the dopamine, the dopamine society, the dopamine economy, is that everybody wants those quick hits of dopamine, but it's the lasting art, that great book, that amazing movie, that amazing song. That's what really, that's not only is that what pays the artist, but that's what pays the people. Like you said,
Mm.
it outlives you. It's there, it's serving people. The alchemist is going to be around serving people for the rest of time.
It's
But
soul nourishing.
yeah, but the problem as the artists that we go through is that we have to it's almost like we have to do both. It's like we have to sit here and we have to create. We have to create in the real sense, where we're spending years, 2 years, 5 years, decades working on a project. But if you're not feeding the if you're not feeding the content machine, if you're not nurturing um, the the dopamine, the dopamine machine, and the people who need a quick hit of dopamine here and there, there's nobody to receive your work. There's nobody to receive it. And now that it's out there, it's like there's the potential for it to be received is there. So it's, sometimes books come out and then they don't pop off until after the author passed away, or they don't pop off until years later. But now in this society where the internet is just flooded with content, it's just flooded with art. AI is making art now.
Mm.
It's just flooded with all this stuff, and a lot of people aren't unplugging. A lot of people can't unplug. Um, so it's like when you, I feel like in my experience, me that as the artist, that's one of the reasons why I have to unplug because you can't you can't like develop a habit of instant gratification and create great art.
Yeah,
You can't
because
do
you'll
it.
give up. It
You'll
takes
get
perseverance and patience, and like
takes
patience has to be cultivated.
yeah. And so it's like I have to unplug from that. But at the same time, again, once you create your thing and you're ready to put it out, if no one is there, like if no one's there, that sucks equally as much. So it's that's another tough, just another
A
hard
conundrum.
artist. Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why I say that it can't be you can't do it just for you because if you're doing it just for you, you're gonna give up quick.
Well, and I wonder too, like, how do we engage on social media or other platforms with the intention of building relationships? And then how do those relationships then go on to serve us when we're ready to put our art into the world?
Mhm.
If it's something that's taking a long time, like rather than creating content, like can we focus on connection and building relationships?
Yeah,
I
and
don't
that's
know. It's something that, that also takes time, and there's also different levels of connection. There's people that you might have an acquaintance level with, and there's people that you might have, more of a recurring relationship with. So that also takes time, and that's also tough to balance. I'm such a people person that sometimes I have to like force myself to not be as social because I'm like, Mariah, focus. You have this project you're working on, and you
yeah.
need to say no to the people that you love, and you need to, and especially as a new mom, like that can be really hard too, of just like, okay, what is that balance, or is there a balance, or is there just a season?
Yeah, it's I think you're doing an amazing job personally.
Thank you.
Um, I do because not only being a mother, a wife, and also having you have your heartbeat community, and you're doing it. That's really what it's about. Like what it's about is essentially creating creating a space for your supporters, creating a community where you actually, and that's why again we're servitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going through the same. A lot of us are going through the same things, but nobody has the guts to talk about it. A lot of people don't have the guts to talk about it. So when you start talking about these things, when it's not just about your art, but it's about um, your story and the reason why you make art, and providing value to people, like telling people like this, I did this and it fucked me up. So
Mm.
don't do this, don't think like this, or this is what I'm saying. Like and people can see themselves in those stories, and then they begin to um, connect with you on a deeper level, and then it doesn't become this shallow exchange of, oh, I made art, go buy it. It's
Mm-hmm.
more so like I actually thought of you when I made this,
Mm.
and so check it out. Not only does it help you, but it helps me as well because it's it's a mutual it's a mutual understanding, and
An exchange.
that was one of the things that we talked about in the past, like earlier when you said you mentioned how I mentioned that the starving artist despises the need for money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thriving artist makes money to make art.
I think you
Um,
should say that one more time, just so we all hear. It's so powerful. So just say that one more time.
so the starving artist despises the need for money. The thriving artist makes money to make art.
I love that.
I
That
love
really
it,
resonated with me.
and I didn't coin that. I won't take credit for it. I read it in a book, and I read this book way after I started this whole movement. Um, but it's nice to see that other people have been in this space as well, like telling artists like, "Yo, there's a lot, there's a lot more to this art shit than you might think, and you're
Hmm.
probably sabotaging your success if you're not thinking too deeply about it." Um, but it's a book called "Real Artists." It's called "Real Artists Don't Starve,"
I love it.
by, I forget his name, but it's a good book, and I read it there, and I was just like, that makes sense because the a lot of like when I was living that life where it felt like I was a starving artist, I despised the need for money, and I
Right.
despised money in general. And it was just something that, I was seeing it in such in the wrong light, you know, because there's multiple ways you can look at anything. There's infinite ways you can look at anything, and a lot of people despise the need for money. And it's like, I understand it because of the way how money seems to rule the world in a way, and especially as an artist, a lot of us are very like childlike in nature, and we're rebellious, and
Mm.
we don't want to live by the
By the rules.
we don't want to live by the rules. We want to do things our way, right? But that's like, it's like when you get a little bit older, it's not necessarily that, or when you get a little bit wiser, I won't say older. Um, it's not necessarily that um, there are rules that you have to. Well, you just learn that there's certain rules that it's not necessarily like a shitty rule. It's just the fact that it's just the way that it is. Like, we have to eat to
It's
survive.
like gravity.
Literally, it's like living a whole life being pissed off because you weren't born with feathers,
Hmm.
and it's like, man, there's so much good out here, and especially when it comes up to money, it's like when someone gives you money, in most cases, saying that you're speaking that you're a good person and you want to make art and you want to bring value to the world and you want to help people. If somebody gives you money, that means you did that.
Yeah.
That's what it means. It means
You have value. What you did was valuable.
what you did was valuable. What that person said, your service or your product is more valuable than the money that they gave you.
Hmm.
So you just made the world a better place. And so when we see money in that way, it just like, it makes you look at, I've never been this person, but a lot of people look at the ultra wealthy um, as like evil or whatever. And like, I'm sure there's some ultra wealthy guy out there who's evil, but um, I don't believe that that's the norm. Like I said, I believe that the universe rewards servitude, and ultra wealthy people, I feel like, are they live for the people more than anyone else.
Hmm.
They've impacted the world more than anyone else. All of, like, being us, even being able to make money in the ways that we can make money now as artists online, and not be tied to a city or a job or a salary. Um, that's because a lot of selfless people saw a world like that, and they busted their ass to create technology that could do that, which is not easy.
Yeah.
So that's where that term come. That's where that statement comes from, in terms of like starving artists, how they see money versus how thriving artists see money. Because the more money you get, the more time and resources you have to make even better art.
Which I love. I love focusing on that because I think for me that's always been why I want to have my own time, because I'm like, I have so many ideas and so many projects I want to work on. I want to have the freedom to have the time to work on them And for me, money has just been a way to get me that freedom and that time to, like you said, make more art. And I definitely have a little bit of a tumultuous relationship with money that I'm definitely working on, but I think what has helped me is to see money as not like the end goal, but like the means to the end. And
Mm-hmm.
it's also like you said, our motivation is everything. It's like if we're doing something because we want to serve, because we want to make beautiful things, because we know as artists and creatives, we have the power to create a new reality. That's powerful. Like
Yeah.
our capacity to dream and imagine and vision things that don't exist, that has the capacity to create new things in the world, to create a new world, to create new realities. So that's really powerful. But if we're approaching it from that aspect, the resources and the money and all of that will come to us, instead of chasing after the resources and the money.
Yeah.
It's like you flip it around.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been trying to do is just like flip the equation around.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just a tool like everything else. Like you can use a hammer to build or destroy. And
Yeah.
it's like the hammer has neutral value, but like it's, you put it in someone's hand and it changes.
Yeah.
So I like to think of it that way where it's like, okay, it's not about the money, it's about how I use it and how I use it in alignment with my values and in servitude and I want to be generous, and to be generous I need to have, my resources and my needs met.
Exactly. Exactly. Like there's so many beautiful missions out there, so many people with these beautiful missions that they're trying to get off the ground, and money is the issue. And I want to be somebody who can facilitate that, because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, we're only one person. There's so many, somebody's gonna cure cancer one day.
Mhm.
Somebody's gonna make us multi-planetary one day. Like, but at the end of the day, all of these things like need resources, and the people who are going to do those things, um, everybody's going to do something different, and we're here to elevate each other and help us do those things.
I love
So
that. I
yeah.
love what you said earlier too about just like the importance of sharing our stories and how I love this idea of like collective courage, and that's why I love doing these interviews and why I've called them like the Pathfinders series, because I think sometimes we know in our hearts like what our purpose is and what we're here to do, but
Yeah.
maybe we've been told a different story. Maybe culturally it goes against the grain. And so when we come and we share our stories of like being genuine, being authentic, living our mission, I feel like it helps others realize like, okay, I can do it too. I
Yeah.
can I can be my unique self. I can offer my unique gifts. It's okay to be who I am. I don't have to be like anyone else. Like I have the right to carve my own path in life and to walk that journey.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I love having these conversations because I hope that it inspires others and gives them courage and also just helps them realize like, you're not alone. We all have so many similar challenges and struggles that we're going through.
Yeah.
But we're in it together.
Yeah. That's why we're here. Like, I think, you know when people this is like slightly random, but not completely. So, when you're like, I don't know if you've ever seen like an animal being hunted in the wild, or like you see like, the videos of the orcas like hunting the seals, and you see like the cheetahs chasing the gazelle. It's like you kind of always want the prey to like escape,
Mm,
um, because it's like, one thing is like killing another thing, like that's evil,
mm-hmm,
that's aggressive, right? But they're both doing the same thing.
mm,
They're both simply trying to survive.
mm-hmm,
Um, like, that's it, you know.
mm,
And life, it's this interesting dynamic. Life, even though life as we know it, ends, until that point, it does everything it can possibly do to survive.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that that feeling that we all feel, it's not just about, it's not doing that just for ours. It's like we're not feeling that just because of our survival. We're feeling that because that feeling is trying to facilitate the survival of everyone, of all people,
Mm.
of the people after us, of the people generations to come. And so it's like it's literally our purpose, our job to fulfill that and to not ignore that.
Mm. And not just to survive, but as you said, to thrive.
Exactly, exactly. To thrive, because thriving is the new survive. You know, like
Mm.
that's just like um, in order to, because as humans we've done a lot of things right, but we've done a lot of things wrong too. And so we've created a world where it's pretty difficult to thrive, um, and surviving is like the norm sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so the the want, the desire, the impulse that you can't let go to thrive is literally for our survival. Because the way that we are living right now, where we're working 8 to 12 hours a day every day in environments that are not creative, environments that we don't align with, and just to be a cog in a machine, be underpaid, and then be thrown away and replaced once we get sick and die. Like eventually everyone's gonna die if that's how it goes for the next couple of centuries. And so like I feel like this impulse, like this message that I'm spreading, that you're spreading, that other people are like, that impulse everyone has inside of them to do more, to do better, is for the survival of humans, because
Mm.
there's a lot of things that we have to change.
Yeah,
So
I love that. One of my favorite lines from Gabriel Garcia Marquez, one of my favorite authors who wrote 100 Years of Solitude. In his Nobel Prize for Literature speech, he was talking about just like the plight of South America and just like all of the civil wars and like political oppression and natural disasters and all of these things that his country and that continent have seen. And he said, in spite of this, we respond with life. And I just like I hold on to that in difficult moments because it's like, yeah, in spite of everything that we've all been through, we continue to respond with life. And I think that's really beautiful. And you putting it in kind of a larger framework of like it's life itself that gives us this impulse
mhm.
and that is moving through us as we create, as we go through our daily experiences. Um, it's so much bigger than us, but yet we all have it and we all share it.
Mhm.
That's really
it's
cool.
it's amazing. And it's like it's one of the reasons why I've always preached mastery, because like I even making music for as long as I have, like it would be like I can't, it's almost like I can't say that I've mastered music. uh,
Mm,
and I've been working on music for a minute, and it's because the process of like dedicating yourself to somebody or to something, dedicating yourself to that purpose and to like developing that skill set, you learn all these things. Like I feel like everything that I'm talking to you about right now is like I've learned because I've put myself through that process of like a task. It's so funny. Like a task works. They say the work works on you more than you work on
mm.
it, or something like that. And
The work works on you. I like that.
yeah, it's like it works on you more than you work on it. Um, and it makes so much sense because it's like when the amount of shit that goes through your brain when you're failing over and over and over and over and over, trying to master something, or when you like achieve flow state and you're like you are going into you reach a new level, or like you hit certain roadblocks, and you have to like problem solve to figure out how to surpass this level, or like the amount of like challenges and mental gymnastics you have to do to master anything at all.
Mm.
um it enlightens you as a human. Like
It's
it
character
legit,
building.
it's character building. Like I learned a lot. I used to be a competitive gamer. And I learned, like, I gained so much wisdom from that experience. And it's so
Mm.
funny, like most people most people of society who don't play video games, or don't because people, there's a dichotomy with video games. Gamers love video games. People who aren't gamers feel like they're a waste of time. They're for little kids, and
Mm.
uh, they're stupid or whatever. And I'm an ex gamer, so I don't really game anymore. I don't know if I ever will again, to be honest. But um, I used to be a heavy gamer, so I'm in the middle. Um, in terms of like, I'm not currently a gamer, but I'm not one of the people who's never done it. But that proved to me that you can literally become enlightened from doing anything, literally anything.
Yeah.
It's just about whether you're paying attention or not.
Mm.
That's really it. It's whether you're paying attention or not, or whether you're focused on the thing enough. Like whether you are actually trying to master it, or you're putting yourself through the ringer and trying to figure something out. You can find enlightenment digging holes. You can find enlightenment freaking scrubbing cars. Like it was amazing. It was an amazing phenomenon that I realized. And so that's one of the reasons why I preach, like, if you choose something, and then like just put everything into it and
Put
see
everything
what
into
happens.
it. Yeah. Be fully present in your body and in your spirit, and like that combination will lead to amazing, it will have an amazing effect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I like, it reminds me of that Zen proverb of like, what do you do before enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water. What do you do after enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water.
yeah, yeah.
It sounds so boring and so mundane, but I think what you said is true. Focusing on anything and being fully present with your attention and with your fullness of being, even if it's playing video games, you can achieve not only mastery but like that spiritual connection as well.
Exactly. Because it's gonna teach you so much. It's gonna teach you so much. Um,
That's very cool.
and so yeah, that's where a lot of this came from. Like, again, at first I was internalizing all this information for selfish reasons, and I just wanted to, be better than everyone. I just like, because that's been a motivation in the past, and not to say that it's not a motivation anymore. Because I feel like as humans we inspire when we are better. So
Mm.
it's not necessarily that that's completely out of my character, but that used to be my sole focus, and that used to be the reason, you know. And again, I feel like the universe punishes you when you gain all this wisdom, and then you just lock it in your brain. I feel like
Mm.
legitimately go crazy, and I felt like I was going crazy.
You're
I
like, I
locked
need an outlet. I need a way to like share this. Well,
exactly.
that's amazing. I have learned so much from you just from this conversation and the newsletter that you write. I think it has so many amazing points that a lot of artists and creatives struggle with. And I think you have a very, your voice is very encouraging and at the same time very honest and straightforward. And I think we need both, right? We need to be called out on our bullshit, and we also need to be kind of nurtured and held in that space of encouragement. And I think you do that really well. Um,
Appreciate it.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you would like to share, or would you like to tell people that are maybe listening or watching how to connect with you?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, of course, you can connect with me by subscribing to the newsletter, the Thriving Artist newsletter. Um, you can go to signup.thriving-artists with an S.com to sign up for the newsletter. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Orcadio. That's Orcaudio. And I actually recently put out an ebook called The Elusive Element.
Mm.
It's pretty much about a lot of the things that we were talking about today. Like the elusive element is it's this element, this mental, spiritual element of succeeding as an artist that a lot of us ignore, and then by ignoring them, we end up living lives that are sabotaging our success as artists and entrepreneurs. So the book is called The Elusive Element. Um, Anyone who is a newsletter subscriber, um, I'm actually announcing it today, so this is the first time I'm announcing it. But anyone who's a subscriber to the newsletter already can is going to get a PDF for free, and
Sweet.
anyone who subscribes to the newsletter gets a prompt to purchase it. It's $16, but maybe we could do like a discount code, like a heartbeats discount.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, you email me heartbeats, and you get 50% off of the
Sweet.
ebook. So
Thank you. That's
yeah,
so generous. I'm really excited that you have that offering, the elusive element, because I think a lot of people just don't understand why they're like when we started our conversation, you said like you were going through the motions and doing all of the external work, but like you weren't seeing the results. And I think a lot of people can really relate to that. So
yeah,
I'm so excited that you have been generous with your experience and with your wisdom that you've gained on your own journey.
for sure, for sure. And I've also started a artist coaching service as well, where because I have a whole system where I how I track my goals, my productivity system, and how I've been able to stay accountable with all the things that I'm doing. And it's another thing that I've noticed like really has been working for me. So it's something that not only, I mean, I have like a PDF and directions on how to use it like for free. Um, but I at my services, I walk artists through it.
Hmm.
So basically, I walk them through how I do it, and then I'm also accountability coach in a way where we have weekly calls, because how I do it for myself is I have weekly check-ins with myself at the end of the week. Every Saturday
Mm.
night, I I rate my week in terms of
Mm.
how um, my the weekly objectives that I wrote down. How did we do? Did we achieve them? Did we not? Why didn't we? To what level did we? And I rate my week. Like I have a full journal of that process, and it stems from the 10-year dream life. So
Okay.
how I want my life to look like in 10 years. What what would be feasible to accomplish in 5 years,
Mm.
um, to be on track for that 10-year life, and then what I need to accomplish this year, and these what I need to accomplish this year to make to knock off some of those 5-year goals, and then uh, month to month, and as it gets smaller, it's it starts to become tasks. Not so
Yeah.
the dream life is the outcome, right?
Hmm.
But everything smaller than that, the 5 year, the 5 year, the 1 year, the 1 month, and then the week by week is tasks. So what do I have to do now to accomplish these things? And so I
Yeah.
do that. I've been doing that for myself for like, I would say, the past since 2020. I think I started it in 2021.
Hmm.
2021, and yeah, it's kind of just been like in terms of my overall process and like the rate at which I'm accomplishing some of these things. I'm like, okay,
Well, I think having both the vision and the structure is what I think a lot of artists and creatives really need of that. It's like the imagination, the creativity, and then breaking it down into bite-sized pieces,
yeah,
which is something that I personally struggle with, so I know other people do too. But yeah, what a cool system, and what a cool opportunity that people can work with you one-on-one. That's amazing.
yeah. And anyone like when you subscribe to the newsletter, information on that is provided, and I also have like a QR code in the Elusive Element ebook to schedule a free coaching session with me. So it's like,
That's awesome.
uh,
Well, I really hope people take you up on it, because even just this conversation, I've gained so much from it, and you have this really lovely, energizing presence. So I think that that's amazing, and that's a gift that you share.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Mariah, friend.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. But until then, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you
I,
for your time and your wisdom.
I appreciate you.
All right. We'll talk
Have a
soon.
beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you.